Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the podcast that looks at the money behind the beautiful game. I can't look at Kieran at the moment because he's smiling at me and he has a lovely smile. I'm bashfully turned my eyes away as we stare at each other across the table. It's a Monday, Kieran, so it's questions today. How are you? How was your weekend?
I'm very good. Big match with West Ham to deal with, but I'll see how I cope with that.
Yes. Well, I don't really know who I want. I want both of you to lose that one.
I thought that would give you a dilemma.
Coming up on, it's usually a bit shorter, but it's not always the case. Mysterious transfer fees, the Championship TV deal, and how to own a football club in Germany. Now, first question, and remember, new listeners will know that on Monday we're driven entirely by your questions. William Powers, hello William, says, what do the guys think? And as we know, whenever they say that, they mean, what do you think? But they're being polite and asking what I think about it as well. But what do the guys think of crowdfunding in the game? And in particular, he talks about the Tifosi shares held with Stevenage and a bond issue at Norwich as well. So is it a way, he says, of just getting fans to foot more of the bills, or is it a way of getting fans involved? It's not something I'm particularly au fait with, so give us a brief explanation of...
Well, this all started off with Norwich City having something called the Canary Bond. And what the club did, it said, can you lend us money and we will pay you 8% interest. Now, 8% interest is pretty good. And we will also repay you in 5 years' time. And it was actually quite a generous deal from Norwich. So they were going to give you 5% interest in the form of cash, plus a further 3% that you could spend in the club shop, on merchandise, on the catering stalls and so on. And if Norwich were promoted within the 5 years, you got a 25% bonus. So Norwich did go up at the end of last season. So everybody who committed to the club, and this was to pay for upgrading Norwich's training facilities. Right. So it's worked really well. If you talk to any of the people involved, they feel that if you've got a fan who is reasonably wealthy, but not wealthy enough to really invest in a football club, you could put in £1,000, you could put in £5,000 or whatever. The feedback that I've heard is that the fans have been very happy with it. Clearly, they've got their bonus as well, but they see that that money, in theory, has been ring-fenced towards that particular project, and I think that's a really important thing, as opposed to going into a general pot.
I was going to say, legally, are they obliged to crowdfund? Does it have to be for a specific purpose, or could a club say, we need $30,000, can we crowdfund it just for administrative costs, running costs, etc.?
The club can crowdfund for any particular purpose that they so choose. As far as Stevenage is concerned, it's simply to upgrade their ability to survive in League Two, and ideally to push up that division. The owner has gone to the fans and says, look, between you, do you think you can get £1 million? Because that would make a significant difference. The owner has been generous historically over the years, but he says, I think it's quite useful for fans to experience what he goes through, in that if you're writing out a cheque for 20 or 30 grand in League Two, or if we move up to the Championship, you've got people writing out cheques for £500,000 a week. That's quite painful, even if you are rich. So to have that to a lesser extent for fans who are far less wealthy, I think what the owner's getting is, right, now you're sharing my pain, so get off my back.
A remarkable club, Stevenage. It's 1976. They were literally playing football on Saturday afternoon in the park. So their rise to the Premier, to the Football League, has been remarkable. So to answer William's question, you think it's actually a good thing? It's not something that will be used cynically by club owners?
It comes down to the quality of ownership and the quality of management at an individual club. If you listen to the airwaves last summer, you had Steve Dale at Bury effectively trying to do the same thing on an informal basis, and frankly, he's a man who I would not put out if he was on fire. Yes,
we've very much had that impression. He's probably the name that's cropped up in most of our social media traffic as the example, the bad example of how to run a football club. Our next question comes from somebody I know. This is from Harrison. We all call him Harrison. He probably has a first name, but it doesn't really matter. Harrison is the a floor manager on TV shows. He's very bald. He's very handsome. He's a Bournemouth fan, not necessarily related to any of those things. But Harrison has asked us a very interesting question, actually, for this time of year. And I have to say it's not something that ever occurred to me, even though it's something we look at every time we read the newspapers or look at Sky transfer news. And why are some transfer fees undisclosed? And who are they being undisclosed from?
Well, they're being undisclosed from the general public. They
Right.
still have to be registered at the Football Association, the Premier League, the EFL, and so on, because there's VAT issues involved in them. So the taxman will get to know those details as well. From the reason why it's undisclosed is sometimes it's actually to do with the player. If a player's joining a club, he doesn't want to know that he's a £30 million signing, and equally, he doesn't want fans to know that he's been signed for 10 grand, because people form opinions on the price of a player rather than his actual ability. So it could be that actually it's in the best interests of the player. The other reason is that, as we know, we're presently in a transfer window, and which has just finished as we record this show. Yeah. But if you've signed,
well remembered,
thank you. If you've signed 3 players already in the window and they're all undisclosed fees, it means that whilst people have got a rough idea, the rest of the market and agents, they say, well, we think they've probably spent £20 million, but you could have spent 40 or you could have spent 10. Now, the more that people don't know how much money you've spent, it's like what you're doing when you're constantly buying and selling. It's a game of poker. And the more that you can hide in terms of having a poker face through the less that people know about you, the stronger position you are when it goes to signing your next deal. If a club thinks that you've just signed a load of free transfers, or you've expressed that you've signed a load of free transfers, and you're then trying to sign a player for a fee, they're going to say, well, we know that you're loaded, we're going to try to screw you for it. If people think, oh, that one could have been 4 million and 5 million and so on, it means that when you go to the negotiation, you say, well, look, we've signed all these players. It's cost us a lot of money. We're not going to tell you what. And the other person might go, oh, okay, I'm going to drop the fee I'm demanding from the sale of our player. So it's a bit of cat and mouse. It's all to do with game theory and negotiation theory, which all the type of nonsense that we teach at university in terms of business management and strategy.
Is there a chance then that when it says undisclosed fee, it could be a free transfer?
Yes, very much so.
Oh, okay. I've accidentally asked an intelligent question. Good.
Because I've seen fees quoted in Transfer Market who normally try to guess them, and then I've actually been in contact with a club, or a club's been in contact with me when I've quoted that, and they said, by the way, we can now say that was a free transfer, and could you change the stuff which I'm putting out on social media and so on. So it certainly could be that particular scenario.
Harrison, thank you for the question. I'll see you next Thursday. Zach Clark, this is an interesting one, of course. Hello, Zach. Thank you for your question. Increasingly, it appears, he says, that Championship clubs seem to be unhappy with the Sky deal. There have even been suggestions of a Championship breakaway, which would be an interesting one. How bad is the deal? If it is bad, and is it worth getting promoted out of League One for?
Let's separate that out. Is it a bad deal? I don't think so. I think that many of the clubs in the Championship have an elevated opinion of their self-worth. How many people actually want to watch Queen's Park Rangers versus Reading?
Other clubs are available as an example.
Yes. So in terms of the viewing figures tend to be low, both domestically for football of that nature, but just as importantly these days, overseas viewers. The EFL struggled to get a good price for their product because you're either in the Premier League, that's very much where it's at. Yeah. And we even know within the Premier League, the viewing figures are being driven by the appeal of the elite clubs. So you can understand the position of the owners of clubs such as Leeds and Forest and Derby, because they all sell out their grounds every week. But actually, the broader audience isn't there. And if you take a look at if you're getting 200,000 people watching you on Sky that's not actually going to be particularly appealing to advertisers either, compared to the numbers that you'll get on terrestrial TV, or even compared to the numbers that Amazon were getting when they put their stuff out for free. So the deal isn't great, but it's we're living in the post-ITV digital world where there was quite a lucrative deal and the people offering it went bust. We've also seen, to give an example of how overseas broadcasting works, that the people who had the rights for La Liga here in the UK, they effectively went bust because they had to stop transmitting because the number of subscribers was so ridiculously low. Right. And now we have La Liga TV, which I presume they're going to probably try to effectively give away the product and build up the popularity of it in the same way that the Premier League did when it started football in 1992.
It's interesting to hear you say that the deal isn't that good, because Sky really throw the book at it. It's very bells and whistles. They would sell the Championship as the second best league in the world, don't they? They sell it as the passion, and there's a game every weekend and midweek. So it's interesting that the financial deal is not that good. So to answer the second point of Zach's question, if you're coming out of League One, obviously you want to do that, but the Championship deal isn't a particularly enticing reason for you to get promoted.
If you look at the Premier League deal, that's between about 98 to 150 million pounds, depending on where you finish. If you take a look at the deal between the EFL and Sky, it's worth around about 2.3 million pounds per club, plus you get appearance fees. So you get appearance fees of 100 grand for a home fixture, and 10 grand, I think, if you're the away club. So the gap is huge. But if the deal is as bad as the EFL clubs are claiming, then why hasn't another broadcaster come in and say, right, well, we're going to trump that and offer you something better because we've got space to fill. Nobody's bidding for it. And remember, the only people that ever did bid for it have now gone bust. And
I suppose as well, the last point on this, that appearance thing is quite interesting. But if you're a club like Luton, who got promoted end of last season, which is when people tend to get promoted at the end of the season. Essentially, they're only on when they play Derby and Leeds and Forest, aren't they? So they will probably be on 3-4 times a season, whereas Derby, Leeds and Forest will be 10, 12 each. So for them, as at every level of football, the bigger clubs get more money.
They do, and also I think from Luton's point of view, and I mean the guys that run Luton are pretty cool. I mean, I've got a lot of admiration for them, the way that they're trying to move to a new ground, how they're trying to expand, and so on. So I've got a lot of time for them, especially given that they were in the National League not all that far.
If you think they're cool, they are cool. If the Baron thinks the football club owners are cool, wow, yeah. And
I think they're actually be good guys to get on the show at some point. I think they'll be quite amenable to that. So I'm saying that for more than one reason.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if they're listening, come on the show. That'd be nice, and maybe it won't be in my back room. I would hate to think of the directors of Luton having to come and sit in my back room while a grumpy cat stares through the window at them. Alan Alcock has asked a question. This is one that you will understand more than I did. I had to read it a couple of times to get it in my head. Basically what Alan's saying is that financial fair play rules fall down because they don't seem to factor in club debt. Is that correct? So is there a reason why debt doesn't incur sanctions?
Yeah, but debt's not a problem. I mean, debt's not a problem. It's meeting your debt repayments is a problem.
I see.
So and the debt repayments sometimes they'll be pushed back. So if we take a look at Spurs borrowings, so Spurs have borrowed I think £637 million, and that's not due for repayment until 2037. So
till when?
2037, and it's interest only. So it's the equivalent of taking out a mortgage now, just paying the interest on it. Provided you can service that interest cost, it's not an issue. So the interest cost does count for FFP, but the actual amount of the mortgage itself doesn't.
I see. Well, just as a point of interest, what happens in 2037 if Tottenham haven't got the money to pay the whole thing back then?
Well, what will happen is they'll just reschedule the loan. They'll just kick it down the road.
Oh, I see.
That's what Manchester United have done with theirs. Okay. So, and that is very common in the world of finance because as far as the banks are concerned, Spurs are paying the money each month, every quarter, whenever it's due. Why get rid of that loan? If we can extend it for another 15 years, then we've got another 15 years worth of interest coming in from a reputable club.
You're a genius. You know that. I would never have thought that. Last question comes from Jordan Donaldson. Now, I'm very keen to answer this question because I think, like a lot of football fans, we always assume that German football is better, basically, like financially better for fans, better atmosphere, better facilities, etc. But Jordan's question basically addresses that. He wants to know what the difference is between our rules on ownership and the Bundesliga rules on ownership, and is it because of their rules? Why does everyone hate RB Leipzig in German football?
Right. Well, let's just separate out those effectively two questions. Under the German Bundesliga rules, no one person is allowed to own more than 50% of a club unless they've had a relationship with the club for at least 20 years. So if you look at Leverkusen, they're connected to the Bayern by a chemical company.
Yeah.
If you look at Wolfsburg, they've got close links to VW and so on. So it doesn't work perfectly, but it certainly puts off all of the stories that we're seeing. So, for example, this morning I was looking at a story in one of the newspapers. Somebody's going to bid £340 million for Newcastle United, and it's a mysterious consortium from the Middle East or China or Indonesia. It would put those people off. So, because they wouldn't be able to control the club, you need to have more than 50% of the shares. So Germany say that 51% of the shares must be owned by unconnected individuals, effectively.
So in general, that's a good thing, isn't it? I'm thinking.
I think so. If you take a look at the comments which are coming from German football executives, but also German fans, they say that German football is so embedded in our culture that we do not want to sacrifice that, even if we could be better off financially. So that's the position in respect of...
and also German football fans are in general are very well organised club to club, aren't they? And are not more passionate than English football fans, but probably more capable of making a concerted effort to stop somebody trying to take over their football club.
That's right. I think they're good at making decisions, and historically they've always been good at taking orders as well. So that's an old school one.
Proper old school. They do. Let's just redress that by saying they do have a sense of humour, though.
Oh, very much. I love. I mean, I teach in Frankfurt, and I love teaching over there. They're really great kids.
I would recommend anybody, if you can afford it, to get yourself on a budget airline and go to a football match in Germany if you can, because it's a fantastic experience. And also, they're so pleased to welcome non-German fans as well that you probably won't have to buy a beer when you're there. But yes, but they are good at taking orders. Yes, then the trains do run on time. Yes.
So here we've got the Borussia Dortmund chief executive saying football is the glue of our society, and that's coming from a chief executive. Now,
really?
if you look at the executives of Premier League clubs, they're very much geared towards looking after the interests of the owners.
Yeah, Ed Woodward's not going to use phrases like "football is the glue of our society," is he?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Even though fans would love to hear him say that and would be taken in by it for long enough for him to make some more bad decisions on their behalf.
That's right.
So anyway, it's a different model to ours. Are there any other significant changes in the significant differences in German football to us?
I think that's the main one. It is the ownership model,
right,
and that filters through.
What about their broadcasting rights? Is that fairly distributed? You know.
Well, they are reasonably democratic in the way that's done. Again, the money's in the Champions League. The German domestic deal isn't particularly lucrative. Huddersfield Town last season, who finished bottom of the Premier League, they earned more money than Bayern Munich did for winning the Bundesliga, and yet Germany has a bigger population than the UK. So that just shows the power and the success of the Premier League. And whilst we give the Premier League stick at times, they have been very clever and smart in the way that they've generated the money, and the way that they've distributed the money is relatively democratic too.
And to answer Jordan's last question, the RB Leipzig. Right.
The reason why Germans this applies to the boardroom as well as the fan base.
Oh, okay.
So you. if you think about the way that some clubs feel or some fans feel towards MK Dons here and multiply that by 10, that's where we have the position of RB Leipzig. What happened was that they originally, the Red Bull people, they took over a club called SSV Markranstadt, who were in the 5th division of German football, and they just pumped money in. So eventually they quickly accelerated their way through to the Bundesliga themselves, and at present they are sitting on top of the Bundesliga. They're actually ahead of Bayern Munich. Yeah. Now, you would think under most sets of circumstances, but Bayern have won the Bundesliga 7 years in a row. There's only been 4 clubs this century that have won it. You would think that a new kid on the block, most fans would react probably in the way that fans reacted to Leicester in 2016. Yeah. Absolutely not. Because the fan base feel that Red Bull have circumvented the rules. And the way that they've done this is, I've told you that 51% of the shares have got to be owned by private individuals. The football club has priced those shares at such an exorbitant price that nobody can afford to buy them. So as a consequence, Red Bull have effective control. Okay. So it's all done very sneaky. And then when you think about, well, are there issues in terms of naming a football club after a brand? Because why is it not Carlsberg, Manchester United? That is prohibited under German football rules. And then they're going, well, hold on, RB Leipzig, where does that come from? According to the paperwork, the RB stands for Rasenballsport rather than Red Bull. It just so happens to have the same initials. So the German fans, they resent this. They feel that they don't like the way that the club is operating, just as there is resentment, as we are seeing in the Championship, with clubs circumventing the rules in respect of selling grounds to themselves. Yeah, so it's causing bad feeling, and that bad feeling is being expressed in German society from the boardroom down to the fan base. If you talk to a German fan about RB, they say they're the only club in the country that have customers rather than fans. So it's that sort of that dripping sarcasm approach. So that's the rationale behind that particular relationship.
And just a bit of context for people listening to this: what sort of size fan base have RB Leipzig got? I mean, what crowds do they get?
I don't know those details, right, unfortunately. But again, compared to the established clubs, they are trying to find their feet. So they don't tend to travel away for things like that. The sort of that relationship where we have it's home and away for an RB fan of a first generation. I think as the kids are coming through, it's becoming less of an issue. Is that there's far less of that close relationship.
Well, thank you for that question, Jordan. If you have questions for our special Monday pods, send them into priceoffootball.com. If you have reviews, good ones, you know where to leave them to make our producer happy. This has been Adapt Dip Production, and we will see you again on Thursday.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.